This week on Supercars Talk, Will Davison, always the bridesmaid and never the bride. The big news this week was the rest of the Indigenous liveries that got released. There were some good ones. There were some, let's start off with Tickford. Did they even bother? They had 5 goes at it and they put like a snake or something and I think an Aboriginal flag on some of them. I thought these had to get signed off, and I would have thought that the effort that some of the other teams went into, if you'd seen the Tickford, would you have not gone, maybe get back to the drawing board, boys? It's hard sometimes. Maybe the sponsors wouldn't approve it, but it just seemed a bit like I forgot to do my homework and just, quickly scribbled something down at the last minute. Anyway, then the rest of them, we have some nice things to say. Walkinshaw and Andretti United, I was looking and I'm like, those look good. Why did they look better than the normal? They're fairly similar to the normal liveries. Nick Percat's, that looked heaps better without that odd grey kind of colour down the sides. That just looked heaps better. Chaz Mostert's, it's a reasonable looking car. I'm thinking, that looks... And then all of a sudden it clicked. Where did the white bonnets go? Black bonnets just totally transformed those cars. Hopefully that's a design feature that kind of kicks on. Matt Stone Racing, I really liked that livery, and it was pretty much the normal livery with some Indigenous drawings in the orange bits. It still looked good. The cars look good on track, everything. Dick Johnson Racing, amazing. I think theirs were a standout. I won't say too much because I think I'll do a separate video on the ranking the top 5 liveries, but I really liked the Dick Johnson Racing ones. Basically the whole car was covered. Then the Premier ones, Subway, that was really good. They're hard kind of colours to work with, but they did really, really good job on that one. The Coke car, outstanding. My top 5 video, that was my favourite one. That knocked it out of the park. I don't know. You could hardly even read the Coke logo on it. They did a really good job. The actual big news for this week, though, is that Sandown and Pukekohe will be going ahead this year. There has been some questions over shipping everything to New Zealand because of, I work in an industry where we do get some stuff from overseas, and shipping is a big, big issue at the moment. So there were problems getting the stuff over there and then bringing it back, and that's there was a bit of a question mark with Sandown because of shipping times and things like that to get the cars in between the 2 rounds and then getting them back for Bathurst and things like that, and also the cost. And I think there was a bit of, if New Zealand is going ahead and we're going to have to spend all this money, that, maybe we should drop Sandown from the schedule to save a bit of bickies and things like that. But no, both of them are going ahead. I am very happy because Sandown is, it's my local round. So, I think I'll make the effort to go there this year. Now, as for the racing over the weekend, I'm going to go and do the talking points kind of thing again, because I think that's worked quite well and it's a little bit easier than running, kind of blow by blow through the racing, and some things do kind of cover across the 3 races. So anyway, we will start off with 1 point in the race, the opening lap of race 2. Carnage everywhere. But how do we blame Gary Jacobson when we don't have any footage of it? So... it was deemed a racing incident. It was a first lap thing. There was cars going everywhere. Where was the footage, though? Don't we have the Tiger cameras in the cars so that they can review these kind of incidents? I was just surprised how little footage there was of it. we didn't get to see any of the in-car footage or anything, and they didn't seem to do any replays. I'm sure there would have been someone in that kind of pack that would have at least had an in-car camera that we could have seen a bit of footage. But yeah, ultimately, Courtney and Pye were out of that race. It did save Pye from having a power steering failure this weekend, so, you know, there is some good things to come out of it. Plus, it did also show that the Team 18 cars were there this weekend, because other than that, it didn't really see that much of them. Probably didn't help that Scott Pye was out for 2 of the races, but Frosty, he was in the top 10 all 3 races, and he was very anonymous over the weekend. Amazingly, Tickford got Courtney's car fixed for race 3 out there, and then Courtney, of course, on lap 1 gets himself sandwiched or whatever, and the front and back were all tuned up again. WAU. Could this be a weekend to forget? Let's start with the good news. Percat. Much better results. Saturday, he was a little bit missing, only 15th, but 10th and 10th in the 2 races on Sunday. I won't mention his qualifying results for the weekend because they were a little bit, Chaz Mostert, though, disqualified from one of the practice sessions and then the race 1. The practice session 1 was a little bit, you know, they didn't run the tyre pressure right. I think one tyre was down APSI or something when they were driving out of the pits. That's not a big... The Saturday race 1 thing, running a blower on the car in the grid lineup thing, that's a pretty black and white thing. You can see how someone can make a mistake. But then they talk about they're going to appeal that decision. And why would you appeal something like black and white like that? It ultimately didn't happen. Maybe they thought, this is pretty stupid, there's no way we're going to win this, and didn't bother appealing it. Ojeda didn't look as good this weekend as what he did down at Winton. I'm not sure if now we were expecting more, and because he did out-qualify Percat a couple of times at Winton, whereas this time Percat was a bit further up, maybe he didn't look quite as good. Did have a bit better weekend than Zach Best overall, but it just didn't seem to be quite as strong for him this weekend. But then you've also got to look at the positives for Walkinshaw. They won race 3. That was a brilliant drive from Chaz. Just absolute classic Chaz, kind of, coming from nowhere, and then that early stop, and then it looked like he was going to be a sitting duck after the safety car intervention, and he hung on, and that battle with Anton at the end there, that kept me glued to the TV. So I suppose that's a lasting impression for the weekend there, and it was definitely a good one. Tickford had a bit of an up and down weekend as well. Cam, kind of nowhere in race 1, then he wins race 2, podium race 3. So, if you can forget about Saturday, it looked like a good weekend for them. Jake Kostecki was best of the rest for them. Courtney obviously had his crashing problems, and they did fix the car for the 3rd race, so he did get out there. But was expecting a lot more from Randall this year. He seems to be kind of a mid-pack runner. Courtney wasn't really anywhere all weekend. Jake Kostecki, he got himself in the top 10 shootout, and then, bundled it into turn 1, but at least he got into the top 10 shootout. And if you're saying he's the second best looking Tickford car out of the weekend, you need to ask yourself some questions, I think. Grove Racing also went a little bit missing this weekend, other than race 2 where Reynolds qualified on the front row, and then he was pretty comfortably running in 3rd during the race. They decided to stop him late and put on 4 tyres while basically everyone else had done 2 tyres. That dropped him from essentially 3rd place down to 9th. He only got himself back up to 5th place. You do have to wonder if a podium kind of went begging there, and maybe they didn't maximise their best opportunity for the weekend. It was a bit unusual now not seeing them kind of on the pace, but probably a good thing that I forgot to mention them in my predictions last week, because maybe I'm a clairvoyant and I could see the future. Gary Jacobson did get himself a penalty over the weekend for taking out Zach Best, even if he didn't get a penalty for the Courtney incident, because there's no proof of that one. Overall, the drivers didn't seem to be happy with the higher tyre pressure regulations. Once again, there's just kind of rules for the sake of being rules. This feels a bit like, I still think you should, if you want to run 10 psi in the tyres, go and run 10 psi or whatever. And if you have a blowout, you have a blowout. Yeah, but you know, the rules are there. It's the same for everyone. Yeah, complain all you like. Is it going to change anything? And I've seen quite a few people saying, oh, the racing was a lot worse from it. And I didn't find the racing that bad over the week. I thought it was pretty good. So, yeah, I can't imagine if the tyres were 17 PSI, how much better would the racing have actually been? There was no penalty issued for Anton De Pasquale running over his rattle gun, probably because it didn't actually happen. So it didn't look like, to me on the telecast, it looked pretty questionable whether he actually ran over it or not. So I think they made the right call to investigate this, you know, after the race. They used, most of the teams, if not all of them now, have cameras kind of above the car during the pit stops so that they can review the footage afterwards to, you know, see where they made mistakes and that. So they used that footage from the DJR camera. They also used the telemetry on board the car to see if the suspension kind of bounced up or anything when they ran over. That all said, no, nothing, you know, there wasn't an impact or anything, so there was no penalty. I think that was probably the right way about it. I have heard some people saying he should have been penalised during the race. Obviously, he shouldn't have had a penalty at all if nothing happened, but I think when there's something like that where it is pretty questionable whether it actually happened, I think the right thing to do is to wait after the race to review it all properly, rather than, you know, haphazardly handing out a penalty during the race. And then how do you fix it if then they find out, hey, he didn't actually run over the rattle gun? How do you take that back? Whereas if something is pretty clear, like, you know, the Gary Jacobs thing, fair enough, getting the penalty, or the next one, obviously Shane Van Gisbergen dive bombing Will Davison at that restart in race 3. It was pretty much a nothing penalty in the end because Shane did break his power steering. However, you know, maybe he got the Scott Pye disease on the car. But yeah, on one hand, it was good that Shane got a penalty for a move like that, which was, you know, pretty harsh on Davo. Of course, Davo's going to have a bit of a cry about it because that's what he does best. But yeah, it was a pretty harsh move on him. I think the penalty was deserved on that one, but then it was a bit of a nothing penalty because Shane was down the back anyway, so yeah. And the final on Davison, all these people saying about he needs replacing, he's no good, blah, blah, blah. What do you mean the bloke's no good? He's, you know, he's doing pretty well. If we get into the championship points, he is running 4th. Obviously, Shane Van Gisbergen is leading. His lead is not as big as it once was. De Pasquale, 214 points behind. Cam Waters in 3rd, 288, and then Davison, 294. Essentially, they're the only guys left in the championship. Reynolds, 470 behind. Chaz Mostert, 474. And then we go Feeney, Kostecki. Brody Kostecki's still in top 10 of the championship. That shows you, because he's been missing a lot recently. Jaime in there in 9th, and Timmy Slade in 10th, 678 points behind, so he's a long way behind. But yeah, you question the results of some of the other guys, because Tim Slade's been missing kind of most of the year, it seems. He's been pretty anonymous. But that's my Darwin review. My tips, I'm pretty sure I tipped the DJR boys to have a good weekend, and my God, did they have a good weekend. So I'll put my hand up and brag about that one, because it's not often, what is it, like a broken clock gets the time right twice a day. Yeah, maybe I'll get another round right at some point during this year. So that's the Darwin review done and dusted. Don't forget, Backseat Drivers on Thursday night. Yeah, it's just a fun kind of, it'd be mainly Formula 1 chat this week because there was no IndyCars, but talking about other motorsports other than supercars. So if you can join us, it's a lot of fun. If not, anyway, I'll still be here next week with the normal videos. So until next time, I'm still Dave, and I'll catch you later.